Aubrey, I'm excited for today's episode.
Yes, this is going to be great. I have gotten this question from a lot of students. So I have a feeling that a lot of you out there listening are going to have this same question.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, we are the one-stop shop for everything IELTS, right? Explaining the difference between scores, telling you exactly what the examiner needs to hear for speaking and writing, sixes, sevens, eights, nines. It's hard to get this insider knowledge anywhere else. But today, guys, we are talking about speaking and we're answering a listener question.
Yes, this is going to be fantastic for any of you who read the scoring system, the IELTS scoring system, and come away more confused than you were in the
It's
beginning
confusing.
because it's not that cut and dry, right? If
Yeah.
it says does some of this, but not with that, and it's just not that clear. So today we're going to clarify it. This is going to be great.
Yes, exactly. All right, cool. Aubrey, can you read the student question, please?
Yes, absolutely. This is from Anne Zamudio. Shout out, Anne. And she asked, how can I raise my speaking score from 7.5 to 8?
Mm.
I've been stuck with 7.5 for so long and I just can't raise it up.
Yeah. Oh, it's so tricky. That half band difference is
Hmm.
it sounds so small, it's half a band, but it could be huge because there are so many factors that go into your score, right? So, how do you guys know what exactly is holding you back? Well, listen up today, guys, because we're going to explain each score: fluency and coherence, pronunciation, vocab, and grammar, and what is the difference between a seven and an eight in each of those categories.
Yes, but first, be sure you guys, if you missed, we had a really good episode just a couple back talking about adjectives for things being scary. And even though it's after Halloween, these are super useful on the IELTS exam. So scroll up if you missed it and be sure to hit follow so you don't miss any of our great episodes.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's get into this. So, first of all, guys, let's give you just an overall look at just the big idea. What is the difference between a 7 and an 8? Aubrey noticed this just now, and I love this observation that in so many of the descriptions of a 7, it says that a 7 shows some great stuff, right? Some great vocab, some amazing sentences. And an 8 shows a range or a lot of that same great stuff. So that would be just the overarching theme of all of these scores. But let's get into fluency and coherence first. Now, what is an 8 for fluency and coherence?
Yes, to score an 8, you will have almost no pauses. There might be a few slight hesitations. Even natives will have a few hesitations as
Sure.
they're speaking very naturally, but only like 1 to 2 because you're searching for a word,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, more than that, and your score will be lower. A 7 will have more pauses and hesitations
Mhm.
that are due to having to think of the right vocabulary.
Yeah, or even grammar. You're like searching for the right verb tense or whatever.
Absolutely.
An 8 also won't repeat as much to buy time. And that's what these hesitations and pauses and ums and uhs do. They're buying time because you're thinking of the language that you want to say. That is a lack of fluency, right? Having to stop what you're saying to think of the next word. So what this looks like is I'll give you an example. The castle was enormous. So it's like I couldn't think of the word enormous fast enough. And so I had to repeat was, right?
Mhm.
Now, the examiner knows that that repetition is due to you having to search for language, right? So a 7 will do that a few times, okay? But an 8 maybe once or twice. Okay. And also, the other part of fluency and coherence is the linking phrases. So, an 8 uses a ton of different linking phrases, a variety, a range of linking phrases. A 7 uses some very impressive phrases and then we'll repeat some other easy ones.
Yes, exactly. And that word some, right? For a 7, you have to use some. For an 8, you have to show skill in this. You have to do it skillfully. You have to use quite a wide variety, a little more on the level of what a native would do.
Yep, exactly, exactly. So for pronunciation, I honestly think that just in my experience, doing thousands of exams and teaching thousands of students, in my experience, the difference between a 7 and an 8 for pronunciation It's not due to like intonation and stress because a student to get a 7 in pronunciation is usually showing those features. You have some great intonation and stress. The issue usually is the individual phonemes, right? So these sounds that maybe don't exist in your first language, like th, r, l. It's those individual phonemes that you're kind of stuck with that at a 7, like you make those mistakes with the phonemes, but at an 8, you're not making those phonetic mistakes anymore. So lots of intonation and stress, and none of that evidence of your first language.
And there are some very clear things that you guys can do to work on this. You need to work on those phonemes that cause you difficulty. You've got to identify them, these specific phonemes that are hard for you, like maybe the or the R, and
Mhm.
then drill those. You need to mimic native speakers so that you can start practicing saying it the way you need to say it on test day if you're going to push up to that 8.
Yeah, totally. YouTube's a great resource, guys. There are some
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful English teachers on YouTube that their specialty is pronunciation, and they'll show you what to do with your lips, your teeth, your tongue, your throat, all of these things that make different sounds. So watch those first, because as an adult, you need to know the details. You need to know exactly what you're not doing, right? So watch those pronunciation videos first, and then, like Aubrey said, just drill, just say these difficult sounds in the words over and over again. All right, awesome. Vocab. What do we got for vocab?
Yeah, so for an 8, you have a wider variety of vocabulary, idioms, phrasal verbs, slang. And again, we have that some for a 7. You
Yeah,
have to use some of this for a 7. But for an 8, you must use a wide variety. You must use it skillfully, right?
exactly.
And then both require paraphrasing. So it's interesting how that repetition of vocabulary and repetition of ideas
Mhm.
is we're talking about your fluency and coherence score and your vocabulary. If you're
Mhm.
repeating vocabulary, that's going to be affecting you here as well, right?
Yeah.
And then we have for a band 7, you use idiomatic vocab and less common vocab skillfully. Oh, sure. Oh, inaccuracies. This was interesting too. For a 7, you can have some inaccuracies. And then for an 8, occasional inaccuracies. So it's interesting these words of fluency that IELTS uses, which are just not that clear, some versus occasional, right?
Totally.
It's a little tricky to know exactly how many can I have,
Yeah, exactly. And there is no specific number, guys.
right?
Like the private descriptors that examiners look at, they don't tell us like 2 mistakes equals an 8 or whatever. But I mean, we could attempt to give you a round number here. So I would say that the same advice goes for vocab and grammar because it does come down to how many mistakes you have. That could be the difference, you know? So for an 8, I would say like maybe 3 or 4 mistakes for vocab and grammar, and you could still get an 8. Any more than that, and that's going to push you down to a 7. You know, and now it's not a hard and fast rule. Don't hold me to that. Exactly 4 mistakes is an 8. But it's a broad outlook that I think is a good rule. So, yeah, a lot of the same advice goes for grammar, guys. So the mistakes rule, of course, and then the range. So an 8 student will have a very impressive range of sentence structures, more complex sentence structures than a 7. So a complex sentence is an independent clause with a dependent clause. Here's an example. When thinking about moving abroad to England, I do feel a bit nervous. So we're using dependent clauses like with the relative pronouns, right? When, where, who, what, which, that. And we just have more of those in an 8. Okay. A 7 will have a few complex sentences, lots of compound sentences, lots of simple sentences, and more than 4 mistakes.
Yes, and this is tricky for grammar, right? You have to remember that the IELTS examiner is listening for all of this throughout your whole speaking exam.
Yeah,
So you can't just use like 2 or 3 complex sentences in part 1 and then think like, "Check, I got it. And now I'm gonna
totally.
use just simple sentences the whole rest of
I
the
know.
exam." It's much more holistic than that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and dude, like you guys want to finish strong in part 3. That's your last impression to the examiner. So you want to leave them, you want to make part 3 your most impressive part. You know, like if you're
Mhm.
trying to game the system, I would say Part 3 is the most important because it's the hardest, and that's where you really show the complicated range of your ability for all of these skills. So yeah, overall, guys, just remember that an 8 will have some mistakes, but not a lot, and a wider range of all the great stuff. A 7 will have more mistakes, a lot of perfect things, but more mistakes, and only showing some of this ability to use great vocab, to use great grammar.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really excited for you guys to have a better idea of what the examiner's listening for. I feel like that is really the key on test day. You've put in the practice to really know what the examiner is listening for specifically and not have it be just sort of vague and abstract can really give you the confidence to feel ready, to know that you're ready.
Exactly, exactly. And if you want more help from us to get ready for the exam, check out our course, guys, online, lifetime access now, allearsenglish.com/KEYS. All right, awesome. Aubrey, I'll see you tomorrow.
Awesome. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.